The Top Floor Please podcast, where women in leadership rise together. I'm your host, Melissa McCormick, executive coach and founder of the Grace and Salt Leadership Academy. This is your space to find clarity, grow in confidence, and lead with bold authenticity. Whether you're navigating the boardroom, building your team, or stepping into new territory, you're not alone. Let's talk real challenges, real growth, and real leadership because the top floor isn't just a place, it's a mindset. Alrighty then, let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. Today we are going to, um, so what I've been doing in the month of February, which if you've been listening, you know, I've been taking pretty much every holiday that is around the time that this podcast airs, and I've been turning it into a leadership lesson because as you know, if you follow me at all, I live life looking for leadership lessons. Like that's what I do. I can't help it. It's part of my DNA. I could be at Christmas time. I could be out for dinner with friends. I could be watching TV, or I could be, a couple years ago, Mike and I would watch the show Suits. I was very into Suits. Well, there was a couple episodes I was like, oh, that'd be a good one for a leadership lesson, right? So everything that I'm doing, I was in a conference a couple years ago down in Florida on the beach, and we had a cocktail night, and I just happened to have a brownie bite, and I took it to take a bite of it, and this seagull came flying down and stole it. Obviously, they knew I didn't need the bird knew that I didn't need to eat it, so they saved me from that. But I was so impressed. I was so impressed with with the act of, I mean, it was almost to my mouth and everybody saw it and they're like, "Did that bird just steal your brownie bite?" Yeah, but didn't touch my hand. Didn't touch my face. Like the precision was so incredible that I came home and I did a bunch of research on seagulls and how they form and their clans and their flocks and all of that. And I wrote a blog about it. So I turned it, actually I did turn it into, I did some coaching training, and so I turned it into my leadership lesson. I live life looking for leadership lessons, and they just get attracted to me, right? It's just one of those things. It's like the reticular activating system that's in the back of your brain. You know, I had a redheaded child and then everybody had red hair. I bought a brown chestnut, as my husband calls it, walnut, chestnut, something like that, car, and then I see that color everywhere. It's because of the filter system, the filter in your brain. And so mine is leadership lessons. So today is no different. President's Day tends to come with, sales. We've got the appliances that we're selling, the mattress store, whatever. Long weekends, historical sound bites, all of those things. But at its core, it's about leadership and more specifically, responsibility. It's not about popularity. It's not about recognition, or it shouldn't be. It's about responsibility. And so every president, regardless of politics or personality, carried the weight of decisions that affected far more than themselves. And that's the part of leadership we don't talk about enough. Hey everyone, I'm Melissa McCormick, and I am the host of the Top Floor Please podcast. So, what do I do? Well, I once planned to argue cases in a courtroom, but today, instead of that, I help leaders stop arguing with their calendar. Right? I traded that courtroom for the boardroom so overwhelmed business owners and leaders can get out of the weeds. They can get out of that day to day. They can learn how to communicate clearly. They strengthen their teams. And most importantly, they get their time back so they can run the business instead of the business running them. That's what I do. So today we are going to talk about the responsibility of leadership. Most people, most people step into leadership thinking it's about authority, right? Oh, I just want to be the boss. I want to get to the top floor. I want to get to the corner office, whatever that looks like. But once you get there, what people discover is that sometimes, painfully, they discover that leadership is about ownership. So if things go well, the team did it. If things go poorly, it's on the leader. That's the way it should be. The leader should not be in the limelight if things go well. It should be, yeah, it should be. I was going to talk about the Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. I think that's his name. Indiana just won the national championship, which was it's going to be a movie because it is an incredible story. Well, this quarterback gave all the credit to his offensive line and to the team, to the defense, to the team. And that's the way that it should be. So ownership, what does that mean? Well, we're saying ownership of decisions that others, quite frankly, may not want to make, ownership of conversations that others avoid, ownership of outcomes that you can't fully control. So at some point, every leader has to decide this. Am I here to hold the role, or am I here to carry the responsibility that comes with it? Yeah, think about that. hmm Am I here to hold the role? Did I want this role just to have the role and just to have the title? Or am I willing to carry that responsibility that comes with the role? Because titles don't lead, decisions do. Yeah. President's Day is that reminder that leadership isn't symbolic, it's practical, or it should be. Leadership shows up in when you're choosing clarity over comfort, right? There's a crisis and you need to explain it to your team, and it's uncomfortable and it's not fun. Choosing clarity over comfort. Leadership shows up when making decisions without perfect information. Now, that's a tough one. Depending what your natural style is, you may be uncomfortable with making decisions until everybody who is a potential stakeholder has weighed in on it, or you want to have more data. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you just have to make the decision without all of the detail. Yeah, leadership shows up when you're standing by values when it would be easier not to. Oh, yeah. Choosing clarity over comfort, making decisions without perfect information, standing by values when it would be easier not to. That's just encapsulating leadership. That's when it shows up. But here's the hard truth. If you avoid decisions, what happens to the organization? It still moves, right? It still goes. It's just going without direction, right? The engine is still moving. It's just that somebody's going to step up and they may be going in an opposite direction than what you want to go in. And then somebody else is going to step up and they're going to go in a different direction than the other person was going in that you want to go in. And pretty soon we stall and everybody's confused. And then it's a big challenge to pull it back and to rally the troops to get everybody on the same page. Yeah. And that's when the business starts running you instead of you running the business. So I want to talk a little bit about perspective. Strong leaders, they don't just ask what works for me, right? We talked about this a little bit before. They ask these questions. And so I want you to be thinking about these questions. They ask these questions. What serves the mission? What supports the team long term? What decision will I stand behind 6 months from now? That is a critical decision. I want you to write that one down. What decision will I still stand behind 6 months from now? We should be asking that whenever you're making a decision. I used to ask two questions whenever we were making a decision. Is it good for the customer? Is it good for the company? And it needed to be in that order. If it was yes and yes, it was good. If it was no and yes, we need to rethink it. If it's yes and no, like yes, it's good for the customer and no, it's not good for the company, we still may do it, but we need to think through it. I rhymed and I didn't even know it. So those were the two questions that I would always ask. Is it good for the customer? Is it good for the company? Ideally, you'd want to say yes, yes. But sometimes you had to say, yes, it's good for the customer, and no, it's not good for the company, but we're going to do it anyway. But if it's no, it's not good for the customer, but yes, it's good for the company. Ooh, tell me more about that one. Then let's talk through that. Let's see how we can get it to a yes, yes. Does that make sense? Like I probably should have just come up with a matrix. That would have been kind of cool. Maybe I'll do that still. But I don't know if I've introduced this book to you guys or not, but I'm going to remind you of it. It's called QBQ. So for those of you who are listening and not watching the video, it stands for the question behind the question. What to really ask yourself to eliminate blame, victim thinking, complaining, and procrastination. And it's all about asking the right question. But it's more than that. It's about accountability and taking responsibility for things that happen. Um, for example, just to give you a little bit of a um, insight and some practical tips, because I like these podcasts to be practical, right? You want to, I say the word right a lot. I'm just noticing that. I'm going to try to stop that. It- when you're asking a question like, why does this keep happening? Why does this activity, task, piece of paper keep coming on my desk when it's not my responsibility? Why does this person really frustrate me so much? I have told this person, I've trained them 3 times and they continue to do the wrong thing. They're messing up, whatever it might be. Instead of asking a question with why, I want you to change it to what or how. And instead of blaming the other person, I want you to use the word I. So begin with what or how, not why, when, or who. Are those important questions eventually? Yeah. If you need to do a deep dive into, okay, why did this happen? Then you're going to say, how did this happen? Not why did it happen? How did this happen? When did it happen? Where did it happen? How can we not do it again? Like, what processes and procedures can we put in place in order to mistake proof it so it doesn't happen again? What do we need to do to help this employee so that they know what success looks like? What can I do to do that? So it's all about accountability and responsibility. And it's your responsibility to hold yourself accountable in whatever situation is going on. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I hope that that really makes sense. But I wanted to bring that up today because I believe that accountability is something that we're missing. And we're not only missing it at the ground level and in like the individual contributor level, the staff level, but we're definitely missing it in the leadership level. And so I want to introduce you to this book. Again, it's called QBQ. It's by John G. Miller, The Question Behind the Question. It's a quick read, but it's a really good read. So here's just a reflection as we go through today, as you're listening to this. I want you to consider this. Where am I delaying a decision that needs ownership? Where am I confusing consensus with leadership? Oh, that's a good one. We hadn't talked about consensus. Like making decisions by committee can be a problem. I agree with consensus with regards to decision making. However, I believe there is somebody who's going to veto, right? There has to be somebody who is the ultimate decision maker to say, yes, this is good for the organization. Does everybody agree? Is there anything here that I'm missing that I should have before we make the final say? Because sometimes consensus can become decisions by committee. Doesn't work, especially in a for-profit or even a non-profit, especially in an organization. What I'm trying to discern here is that, or differentiate, is that in a volunteer organization, it may be different. If you're leading volunteers, like I am a very active member of my Rotary Club here in Northern Illinois. If it's with my Rotary Club and I'm leading a discussion and we need to come to a decision, consensus makes sense because they're all volunteers. But if you're in the organization, you can go down the road of consensus. I think it's important to be sure that you're not a dictator, but there needs to be a leader. Everybody's looking for the leader, whoever has the highest status in the room for a decision. And if you want them to make it, then you need to be clear. You need to say, no, this isn't my decision. This is your decision. Here's your guardrails. Now make your decision. right? Why not? Empower them. What responsibility am I avoiding because it feels heavy? Leadership does not get lighter when you avoid it, it gets clearer when you step into it. I love that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I want you to take one idea from today's episode and ask yourself this: where is this showing up for me right now? Like if you need to go back, if you need to re-listen, whatever it might be, where is it showing up for me right now? And what am I going to do about it? How am I going to buy? What's my one action? Am I going to buy the QBQ book? Am I going to pay attention to the questions that I'm asking? Am I going to figure out, am I really taking accountability or am I blaming others? Yeah. Leadership only changes when behavior changes. So, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I work with leaders who are buried in the day to day. I help them simplify things, get out of the weeds, get out of that day to day, start running the business instead of the business running them. Now, if that sounds like you and where you are, you can learn more about working with me at graceandsaltleadership.com. And if this episode was helpful, if it resonated with you, or you know somebody else that it would really help in their journey, in their leadership journey, I want you to share it with them, please. And then also be sure to follow or subscribe so that you don't miss what's next. All right, everyone. I really appreciate you showing up today on this President's Day. And until next time, keep leading forward.
Thanks so much for hanging out on the top floor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a little boost, share it with your friends to keep the momentum going. And hey, if you're ready to rise, find your voice, and lead with clarity and confidence, we'd love to connect with you. Reach out at graceandsaltleadership.com to learn how Grace and Salt can support your growth. Remember, you don't have to lead like everyone else, just lead like you. All right, I'll see you next time on the top floor.